Now today in the shop we have a relatively simple project. Might be a little labor intensive. What we're going to try to do is restore, bring back to better than new condition. It's about a 25-year-old muffler that's been sitting in my parts bin since the day I bought the 750. It's one of many exhaust systems I previously had on a bike. I put this one in storage. It needs a complete rehab. And for people that might be new to the channel, we do several things on this channel. We have wheel projects, I call it evil twin projects, where we change out parts of the bike. We go on rides all season long. But the biggest thing that we try to do is share good quality information that's simple to understand and reliable and accurate. And I try not to leave out any steps. Now, restoring an old aluminum muffler like this Muzzy, it's a labor of love, but it's something pretty much anybody can do with very simple tools, very little material, and virtually no money at all. It's a good little project. So recently we did a quick evil twin project on our FZR 1000. We swapped out the muffler for a Vance and Hines. It was already polished on previous videos. And by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, you put my name in quotation marks, and I'll put it up on the screen spelled out correctly, in quotation marks, and in the subject, like carbon fiber, engine polishing, painting, or whatever, and that'll bring up those videos right to the front of the channel. And with 2,000 videos, that makes it very convenient. But anyway, today's project, a little bit different than normal. We're just going to have enough time in the day. I want to take out the muffler that actually came with the 750R, the Ninja, and the head pipe, and both of those need to be repolished. They're 4 or 5 years they've been sitting in the closet. I want to show how to repolish them, how to polish them up to what I hope is going to be a very nice new condition. And then the last thing is, and if we have time today, and I don't know if we will, or we'll just make a separate video, the install. But again, it depends on how much time we have today, and that varies from day to day. And we have 4 different exhaust systems for this bike. When we used it as a track bike, we had one that was super, super loud with no baffling at all. The Norton muffler, which is it's on for the last couple of years. I love the sound, but where we ride now, it's a highly populated area, and I don't think that loud sound is working to my advantage when I go back and forth down the same road over and over. So having the bike's quieter right now, a big advantage. And I've been doing it to all the bikes in my collection. I have 7 registered bikes. I'm trying to quiet each one of them down, including the RD. And I have 2 sets of stock mufflers right now for the kind of riding I'm doing and where I'm riding. The stock mufflers are just working fine. I had put the quiet mufflers on the R1 after having a kind of a disappointing day where I did get stopped. And I know if I was on a quieter bike, I wouldn't have been stopped. Luckily, I didn't get a ticket. Now next winter, when I do whatever I'm going to do on this bike to make it my own, I'm not sure I'll do anything to the muffler. The muffler on this bike, actually people don't really notice, the bike doesn't even have a muffler. It has a catalytic converter only. So that's the background on what I'd like to do today. I got to dig out the muffler and dig out the pipe and get ready to polish it up. And I'm sure some of the information on this video, if you're not familiar with polishing, will make it a lot easier. Now, and actually when you want to polish anything aluminum, this is going to be basically polishing aluminum on this video. The rules are pretty much the same. Now, even if you were polishing a whole frame like the FZR, which is a monumental job, definitely not a one-day job, well, what happens, or this is on a recent video polishing this muffler up. We did that over the winter. And thank you, Luciano, for donating that to our evil twin cause. But all that information can be had again, quotation marks and then the subject. It'll come right up. And I will put that up on the screen maybe even more than once. Now, being really honest about things, I just save too much stuff is the bottom line. And as I come over to my cabinet, I tend to save everything. It's a mistake. I have cabinets that are just full of stuff I'll never use again. And one of my jobs today, or tonight or tomorrow, is to get rid of some of the stuff that I've been keeping that I know I'm not going to use. Now here's the muffler. I think this is it right here. Yeah, that's the one we want to polish. But you can see it's been sitting in a cabinet now for basically probably 4 or 5 years. And I'll dig out the head pipe, and that'll be a good polishing day today. Now again, this is a muffler that came with the bike. We've had it on the bike, so it shouldn't be a lot of big job to fit in it, but the polishing will be. Now, first thing of any job is to figure out what's not aluminum. This is aluminum. Anything that rusts is an aluminum. Obviously, the pipe is a regular steel here. It looks like it's not even plated, but we will try to clean that up as best we can and try to put some good quality information, and if you have to do a similar job, it'll make it a lot easier. Now, this is a funny thing. I polished the exhaust system, and again, that's on the MT-09. It's the other part of it, and this last little bit, just that last little bit being polished, I thought added a nice detailed touch. Very easy to do, and basically no money at all. So it's all in the eye of the beholder, though. So even little detailed parts, like the carbon fiber parts we got from Vlad for this bike, every time you do one little project like this, I always say you make the bike your own. And by the way, we also have a video on the channel of polishing the wheels of this bike. So a lot of good information. You just have to search it and pull it up. So here's just a little view of the before and after, before we polished it, and by day's end, it looked better than factory new. So the first thing I want to check, the ends of steel, okay. Obviously that's aluminum, and we don't need this bushing right now, so I can get rid of this. The first thing I want to do is I want to pick a spot on the back of this, and I'll be real careful about this. It'll be a spot that you typically don't see, and it's always good to do a little test. And get rid of these bolts just to have it make it a little bit easier to work on. And let's pick, I want to see this with my own two eyes, I guess is the right way. But just to see a little test of how quick this is going to come up and how terrible it is. Now let me show this up close. Over here you have some real pitting, and over here you don't. So let me show this. Now this is the back of the muffler that you really don't see. This is aluminum that's been pitted. This is when you leave a part in the garage with no wax or nothing protecting it over the winter time, and this has been there probably 5 years. And this is part of it that for some reason, now maybe there was a rag laying on that or something, I don't know. But what happens here is this is going to require some wet sanding. And to get out these scratches, well, this is the back that you don't see, and I can see the part. Let's see the part I really want to see. Yeah, it has all that, those little, and what they are is, if you look at it under a microscope, they're little moon craters. So the first thing we need to do is get them out before we do any serious polishing. So now the first question is always, we know it's aluminum, and this is something you have to consider. Aluminum, when this probably left the factory, it had a coating on it of some kind to minimize the oxidation. It was either clear anodized or it was polished and some kind of plating was put on it. So I need to know, the first thing I need to know before I can polish any piece of aluminum really, is there a coating on it? If there's a coating on it, first thing is to get the coating off. So a quick and dirty way to know if there's coating on it is you just take a little spot, and this is on the spot we're not going to see, and do this for a minute or so. And what will happen is if the rag turns totally black, then you know you're in a real aluminum. If you're polishing away and a rag isn't turning black, it might be some kind of coating on there that you have to deal with. So the first thing, and of course if you do this and it's mounted to the motorcycle, try to do this on a spot underneath that you don't really see, in case there's some plating. Now you can see we're in raw aluminum here. It looks like anyway. So here's the first thing. If I were not in a rush to do this, I would sit with this part on a motorcycle and just do it all by hand. But I want to show the next level up of making it even nicer than that. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to go to our sanding drawer and get out some 2000 grit Rhino Wet. Now, if this doesn't work, we have 1500. We can go to 1200 or 1000. But choice one would always be to do it with the finest grit that you have and then go backwards. Don't start with 80 grit and put scratches in, because this will scratch the aluminum and then the polish will take the scratches out. Very microscopic scratches. So this is 2000 grit. I have an ordinary body shop. We could do this by hand even. Soak the paper, even though you would want to do this wet just to save the wear and tear on a sandpaper, or else you wind up spending a lot of money on sandpaper. So again, I did a little test with the polish. I want to do a little test here, because one of the things I want to do is get out as many of those little divots as I possibly can. And we'll just use this. I'm doing it in a 90-degree pattern, and it doesn't really matter. You can do it in any pattern. This is just one way to, some people say that it makes it a lot better is to do it in a 90-degree, so you're making like little waffle patterns on it. Now, I haven't found that to be a giant help, but it doesn't hurt either. So I always think there's people sharing this information that are a lot smarter than me, so I try to do what they say. Try it first. If it doesn't work, then I can do whatever I think will work. But always good to listen to an expert first, somebody that knows more than you. And thank you to all the people that post this information up on YouTube. Of course, one of the things to always be aware of, most people want to just take it apart like this and just go get a buffing wheel, and they'll buff it forever, but it'll never come out as nice because you won't have the part flat. The problem is that flatness is what you really want. And you really will take forever to do it. This way, you spend a lot more time with the sandpaper than if you didn't do it with sandpaper. So that time is an investment, because when you go to buff it, it'll buff up a whole lot quicker than if you didn't do that. So let me wipe this down and let's see what we have. That part is sanded, and we can do a quick little test. In case I didn't mention it before, this is Mother's Magan aluminum polish, but keep in mind, almost all good modern polishes, Meguiar's, they all seem to work well, and everybody's got a favorite. It's a very subjective thing, but any one that you find works for you, then just put it into your arsenal of things you want to use. So now this is a part that's sanded, and I'm going to try to just spend a minute or so on here. See if this comes up, because if it does, then we move right on. We just move on to the next step, and we're all set to go. Now, if we still had big divots in this, then I'd be sanding some more, because it's got to be flat first. If not, you're buffing out, and those divots just stay there forever. So that's an important concept. And always, another thing to keep in mind that I've found, there's a lot of ways to buff anything, and there's a lot of ways to make the job really harder than it has to be. And or you make it that you work twice as hard, and the result is that it didn't come out anywhere near what you want. So now what I'm striving for with this part, I want it to look like polished aluminum, highly polished. If I do that and I put a coat of Flitz on it, the odds are good it's going to stay that way for, well, for a longer time than if I didn't do it. But the first thing is to get this part to see. Now, I'm obviously in aluminum. There isn't plating, or the plating has worn off in this area. And I wanted to show it. This is kind of in real time. That's been sanded with 2000 grit. And that's pretty much what we're striving for. So the next step on this, now I'll try a buffing wheel on this, just to see how much better it's going to come up with the buffing wheel. But basically, even that, I want to have as the first thing, I want to have it that it's sanded, and then use the compound to get out the sanding scratches. And 2000 grit and this polish seem to be a good combination. So I'll put some of this in fast forward just to make the video a little more watchable, but it does take a little time. So we did this just using the compound that we had on top, which was the white. But keep in mind, if the scratches are deeper or the imperfections are deeper, you could get more of it out with black compound and transition into the red and into the white. By the way, all of this stuff's available at Harbor Freight. You can always wax the wheel with an old candle. That'll help grind into it. But in the very end, you want to rake the wheel, get all the compound off, and then do the final thing. I would want to do it anyway with white. So those steps, step by step by step. What I've tried to do is lay out the steps. Now the steps, when we go to the good side, I'm going to sand it with the 2000 grit, do the whole thing, then go over to the buffing wheel and do the whole thing, and then at the end, do the end caps, which are steel, and they don't need any sanding. We'll just buff them right up. So, but we're going to start with, we've done a little test, and I think you can see, I'm trying to put this on a video, that it's going to come up, whether you do it by hand, whether you do it with a machine. The machine is just going to make it a little bit faster. But in the end, we hope we're going to have the whole part look like right what we have right there. So now a good sanding tip, whether you're sanding paint or aluminum, it doesn't matter, or steel, is you take a sheet of sandpaper like this. This is a half sheet of paper, and I would sand, and this is just pretty low-tech stuff, but it does work. I would sand here. Then I would take this piece and put it here, sand, because I'm really only using the edge. Turn it around, maybe put it in several other spots, and then you can cut an inch off each edge, and it'll still be big enough that you won't be using up a box of sandpaper to do a part like this. And again, I'm not sure about the waffle pattern, if it makes a giant difference, a little difference, but I haven't found that it ever hurts. So the next step on this, and I'll do most of it off camera because what's going to happen, this is going to turn into a video that's just boring and long. And this kind of gets to be boring, and maybe it'll take, the whole project should take a couple hours. But in the end, I'll have something that's, I think it's going to be nicer than the day it left the factory. And all of these things just require a little patience. Alright, so this is all sanded down now, and we've got off all of that white, that crusty, salty stuff. And I think we're ready to go over to the big buffing wheel and just see how it's going to, if this is going to pop right up. Now, it's just easy having this in fast forward. This just takes patience, and as many times as I've done this, I always think to myself, oh, I'm going to do this in 5-10 minutes or something, and then I go back and then I find a little spot. It just takes patience. It takes a little time, but on the other hand, when you're all done, you really do have something special. And the nice thing is you can do this similar thing and have that aluminum look that I love. Just polished aluminum. It just glows in the dark. It's really nice. And even here with the basic little polish, the look, I say it glows in the dark, it's pretty funny. It really does have a very special look that I don't know any other material except aluminum that has that glow, that look. All right, we've got that. Look, you can see my beautiful face in the reflection. That worked out great. Now the next step is I want to clean up these parts. These parts have a little tarnish and rust, the bolt. Same thing with the buffing wheel. Same thing with the back, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now, because the end caps are steel, they require a little more buffing than the aluminum to get really nice and shiny. But it's all doable. And a final thing I want to do is just get a little more polish on this with the hand buffer. And that'll finish out this part, and we go on to the head pipe. Okay, for this part of it, just going to use the mother's wax on a small Harbor Freight hand buffer. Well, one of the things I didn't mention is it pays to put on a new pad every time you buff either paint or aluminum, just because the hardened compound leaves scratches. Now it's really starting to come out nice, but now I want to finalize this with a coat of wax just to protect it in the time that we're going to be, we don't know when we're going to be able to install it, but it polished up pretty nice. And Meguiar's wax cleaner has a little bit of grit in it, and it does give it a little protection. And this really goes pretty quick, even with the big or the small buffer. Just for even more protection, I want to put on a coat of Flitz by hand right at the very end, just to protect this as long as possible. I put a lot of work into polishing this. This will really make a difference. So I really try to stack the deck in my favor here to get this as nice as possible and to protect it. And once I get it back on the bike, and I'll get rid of the fingerprints and put probably another extra coat of Flitz on it. But right now, I couldn't be happier the way this worked out. That not long ago was really not in great shape. I think that really worked out great. Now we got to do the head pipe, the mid pipe. And between the Flitz and the wax, it should get us through the whole summer without having to repolish this. And the only thing that'll happen if we ride in the rain or in some really dusty, crappy weather, they'll just need a little refresh. Now I think that's ready to install at last. Only thing left is that pipe, the mid pipe. Now, just to keep the video from getting too boring, this pipe is steel. You can tell it rusted. Aluminum doesn't rust like that. And I'll do the same thing with the 2000 grit paper, the buffing wheel, and the polisher. And probably within a half an hour from now, that pipe will look as nice as the muffler. Now, of course, steel is a little bit harder. It just takes a little bit longer to get rid of the rust, and the 2000 grit does a really good job of doing that. I'm only going to do one little spot here to show you how quick this goes. I always like to show something in real time anyway. This pipe was pretty rusty, but we can bring it back, and once we polish it and put some flitz on it and some wax, it should stay that way for a while, that's for sure. And a lot of times when you paint, when you're doing steel or titanium, the black compound will grind away and get rid of the 2000 grit scratches. Again, we've got a lot of that, an awful lot of that out on our channel already, so I hate to just make it redundant. But anyway, show that up close, and you can see what we've had to start with here. And at 2000 grit brings it up pretty quickly. That's really once that's all clean, be ready for the buffing wheel. And of course, all the time you put into a part like this, knowing you've brought it back from the rusty condition makes it worthwhile. And the steel just takes a little bit longer at the buffing wheel. It's always good to start with the black, transition to the red, the rouge, and then finish up with the white. And on steel, you just got to be prepared to take a little extra time. But the process that I use is exactly the same, and it's time consuming. But in the end, I've got a part that was just sitting out in the garage, rusted up, and it's going to be a nice focal point of the bike from this point on. And it really didn't cost me anything but an afternoon of time. Well, that gets us ready for our next Evil Twin day. And next day we're not going to ride. We'll get this installed and, of course, take a test ride, which is always the most fun of all. Anyway, I've had this muffler on a bike already, and it had a nice mellow sound. And this may be a big improvement over the Norton. The Norton is really a little loud for riding up in these populated areas. Anyway, I wanted to thank the healthcare workers, guys. Thank you so much. Keeping us safe, keeping my family safe. I totally appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I hope you got some good information out of the video, or inspired to go polish something on your motorcycle or whatever, or just enjoy the entertainment. So again, thank you so much for watching. So our objective is to share good quality information. I think everything on this video is doable by anybody with any skill level. It just takes a little bit of labor. It takes a little bit of passion. It takes a little bit of wanting to get it done. And I hope I've been able to share that without leaving out any steps or anything that would make it difficult to do. Anyway, we do try to post up something every day or so. Our channel is dedicated to the sharing of the passion for motorcycles, both old and new. Every type of bike there isn't one I don't like. And I wish I had room for them all. And I wish I had the body to ride them all. But we'll cut our losses and take what we have. So thanks again so much for watching, and hope you enjoy all the videos on our channel.